Hello. I'm an economics professor.
Nerd.
You haven't had academics here before.
Boring.
In the talks in the last 2 days. I'm different, so this is going to be a little different. Maybe you're bored with what's been happening. This will be a change of pace, but I'm really into big ideas with big potential, but I don't have an institute, I don't have funded projects, I can't show you a network of people who've been applying it that much, I'll tell you a little. But what I can promise you is I've thought about this stuff for decades, and I've got some really solid ideas, and a lot of people have liked them. Let's get this. Here we go. All right. So the first thing to keep in mind is all innovation is the product of some simple, elegant ideas with lots of messy details. And what I want to do is inspire you to see the elegant ideas and then maybe work on the messy details. I don't claim to have worked out all the messy details, but I do claim there's something here. All right, so we're starting in the context of people pay experts to do stuff for them, and they usually don't have very good ways to keep them accountable. I've listed some of the more common ways that we keep people accountable, but it's not very inspiring. The last one on the list is the sort that economists find most inspiring, where the simple idea is you don't pay them until they give you what you want. And if they don't get you what you want, they don't get paid. And when they know that, they maybe work to get you what you want, right? The idea of prizes. But I'm going to show you 4 new ways to do this. The dates there show you when I started working on these ideas. So some of them I started 30 years ago, or 25 years ago. Actually started 35 years ago on the last one in some ways. So these are old ideas. They've been around for a while. They'll probably still be around for a while, but I still think there's a lot to them. All right, let's start with agents. Lots of people in society have agents. You pay an agent some fraction of the business they help you get, and then they advise and promote you. It's very common, but most people don't have an agent. But could you? So if you think about it, the government in the USA takes on average 23% of your income. So they have a great incentive to advise and promote you. They just don't do it. So the idea is to transfer that role to somebody else. Hold an auction, and whoever wins the auction and pays the most money, they get the right to get the money you pay to the government for the rest of your life, and then they now are your agent. They have a strong incentive to advise and promote you, substantially stronger actually than most actual agents have, and it's win-win. It only happens if you want it to happen, and if you approve the agent, this person or organization wants you to win in the sense that they want you to make more money so that you'll pay more taxes so they'll get more money. Or you can even buy this right yourself and lower your own tax rates. So in a diagram form, in the status quo world, you could pay an advisor to promote you and advise you, but you'll have to pay something for that. And then separately, you pay the government for stuff, and then the government borrows money. But instead of borrowing money, the government can hold this auction, and then the auction gets the money now instead of later, which is the same thing they get now by borrowing money. And so in the alternative world, we merge the role of the agent and whoever loans money to the government, and now this agent pays money to the government in the auction to get the right to get your taxes forevermore, and then they advise and promote you, and it's free. No cost to anyone is the key selling point here. At the moment, if you want an agent, it'll cost you. You'll have to pay a substantial fraction of your income to get this agent to work for you. But this agent costs you nothing. So that's idea number 1, right? You're impressed, I can see. All right. Idea number 2. At the moment, the medical profession does things for you, and you pay them, but it's not very clear they have good incentives to do the best things for you, to do the things that work and not to do the things that don't work. How can we do better? Well, what we want to do is create an agent who has the incentives to do better. Now, you might think, as many people do, medicine's so complicated, nobody could really oversee them because there's such complicated things that they know you don't. How could you possibly, judge them? But the key point is the things you want out of medicine are observable. You want not to die. You don't want to be disabled. You don't want to be in pain. That encompasses most everything you want. And those are completely observable things. So we just want to pay for results. How do we do that? Well, you pay them a premium, and then when those bad things happen to you, those bad things happen to them, i.e. they have to pay a lot of money. That's what happens to an insurer who insures you against death or disability or pain. So the idea is just to merge your health and life insurance and life and disability and pain insurance into one agent, and then they want to take care of you. Now there's a complication is, as much as you love your relatives, if you value your life at $5 million, you don't really want to give your relatives $5 million when you die. So you need to set up a third party to pay some of the premiums and get the benefits. It's possible. This main agent, they want to help you because of this incentives. This other anti-agent wants to hurt you, so you have to kind of make sure they can't. But that's the main complication. So here's the status quo. You, on one hand, pay people for medicine when they just do stuff, whether or not it's good or. And separately, you buy life insurance, where you pay the money, and then when you die, you get money. Now we're going to merge this into one actor who you pay money, but then when you die, get disabled, in pain, they lose a lot of money to you or whoever you've set, and to a third party who adds to the incentives, but we have to make sure they can't hurt you.
They're blind.
Say again?
They're blind.
Yeah, and handicapped. Yes, we keep them away from you. All right. Now, idea number 3. It's going to be a more complicated idea, so I have to really clear when I'm proposing a change what I do change and what I won't change. This is about criminal law. We're going to radically reform criminal law. What is not going to change is how we define what is a crime, the court processes for adjudicating accusations, how we set priorities for different kinds of crimes in terms of detecting them and discouraging them. But in the circle, all the things I'm going to change in the proposal, how we detect crime, how we punish it, your freedoms of privacy and movement, choices of co-liability, who is liable together, those all get changed now. So here's the key idea in words. I'll give it to you in a diagram. In words, everyone has to get a voucher to vouch for them. In ancient societies, often, if a stranger came to town, the way people might deal with them is somebody would say they vouched for them. And so then if you could deal with them, because if they hurt you, they might run away, but the person who vouched for you is still there. So the idea here is everyone must get someone to vouch for them. And the voucher basically, if you commit a crime and you can't pay, they pay. And now, once we have this voucher who's ready to pay a lot, we can punish all but one crimes with fines. We don't have to have other sorts of formal punishments. The one exception is, of course, the crime of not having a voucher. But you and your voucher get to have a contract that specifies all sorts of things, including what kind of punishments happen to you in various cases that you might be found guilty of things, and we'll let that contract include a lot of stuff. It can also include co-liability, limits on your privacy or freedom of movement. You and your voucher can figure out all the freedoms that you want and are willing to pay for. And then, if you are found guilty, the voucher pays. And in addition, we might as well pay the people who detect crime and manage to prove it to the court with a bounty. So they get paid a bounty, and then also that money comes from the fine that comes from the voucher, who the main qualification for being a voucher is they have the money to pay. That's it. So here's the status quo. There's this government who manages all these things without necessarily good incentives. They pay a judge, they pay a police, they pay jails, and then they're all supposed to do the right thing to make sure crimes don't happen, but they don't necessarily work very well here. So the alternative is, the guy on the left is the voucher, and you pay the voucher a premium, and then if you're found guilty, the voucher pays. Whatever you don't pay, and the voucher in your contract specifies punishment and pays for the punishment. And now, whoever catches you gets paid a bounty for catching you. And now, again, we're paying for results. What are the results we want in criminal law? We don't want people to commit crimes. We want to notice when they do commit crimes. And when we do commit crimes, we want to discourage them from that somehow. And this is a simple way to pay for results to produce all those ends. Now, there are some problems. You might think of this, and we could discuss them if we have time, but I'm trying to cram in a lot of things here, unfortunately. In general, you might think pay for results has a number of issues that people have noticed over the years that are issues completely valid, and we could discuss them, except I'm rushing on to the last one. This is decision markets and prediction markets. So, for a very long time, there have been markets where people traded things like this bar for money, and it had a price. Those prices have fluctuated, and when prices fluctuate, people wonder whether, it's weird, the price will go up or down, because you can turn a market like this into a money pump, as many folks in crypto know. If you can guess which its price is going to go up, you buy. You guess it's going to go down, you sell. And as a result of many people trying to play that game, we end up embodying a lot of information on the market price. If the price goes up on Mondays, people buy on Sundays, sell on Tuesdays. It no longer goes up on Mondays, etc. So market prices embody a lot of information. That's a powerful engine. And we can use that power if we just put an asset like pays $1 if Trump wins the next presidential election. We can get people trading. We can get a consensus price that represents a probability of that event happening. And this is a powerful engine to find out the answers to things. And once we have an engine for finding the answers to things, we can use that to do a lot of things. So, first of all, in case you don't know, we have many dozens of examples where people had these sort of markets going up against other mechanisms at the same time with similar resources. Consistently, the markets do about as well or substantially better, pretty much almost never worse. And if you just think about it, they have a number of obvious advantages. They always give you a number. It's updated continuously. It's precise. It's not weasel words. It turns out to be hard to manipulate these markets. You don't have to figure out who the experts are. You can just let whoever wants to participate. And it turns out to be as accurate as the alternatives. This is the concept that I started working on 35 years ago. And since then, I worked on a lot of tricks to make these things work better. You can make automated market makers help you they do make trade easier. Allow an edit-based interface where you can just say, what do I think my beliefs are? And you edit the beliefs to turn to what you like. You can subsidize through them. There's simple ways to limit sabotage. People who try to manipulate these prices actually make the prices more accurate. I worked on a system that I won't tell you that much more about, but just we can do combinatorial prediction markets where we have thousands of prices that are all connected together in a big Bayesian network, where if you update one part, the Bayesian network updates and spreads and updates all the beliefs. That's feasible today. It's been done in a big project. I want to mention some of the problems that happen with prediction markets. One of the simple problems is, imagine somebody in the C-suite who's an autist. They just don't have much social savvy. They just blurt out whatever pops into their head. How long would a person like that last in the C-suite? Not so long. Well, that's kind of what prediction markets are. They just blab out whatever they think with no sense of who might be bothered by that. And that gets them in trouble. That's an obstacle. That's one of those messy details I was talking about. Another issue is most people, when they have a project and a deadline, they think about, well, what'll I say if I don't make my deadline? And the favorite excuse usually is, we were going along fine, and at the last minute, something came out of left field, nobody can see it coming, it's really rare, it'll never happen again, and knocked us flat, but hey, let's just forget about it because it's such a rare thing. Problem is, if you put a prediction marker while the project's going on, predicting whether you'll fail, you take away the story. You don't get to say, you couldn't see it coming, because you saw it coming, because the market was telling you. So, again, more of those messy details. This is part of the reason why they're not more widely adopted, but it doesn't mean we can't find out ways to deal with these problems. So, we need more work trying these things out to work out these messy details. But let's go farther. If we say thinking of having a single-payer healthcare system in the US, because people like that idea, we can have a market and what the chances of it are by trading dollar bills for dollars if this happens. Or we could have a market in the conditional chances conditional estimate of our lifespan if we do it. And then we could do the same on the opposite side. We could have a market where we trade lifespan assets if we don't have a single pair for dollars if we don't have a single pair. These two markets give expected values is the key point. You can not just get probabilities or expected values, you can get conditional expected values. That is, what's lifespan expected if we do one thing or if we do the other. So you can see how this advises a decision. That's why I call it decision markets. And this is what I think is our most valuable prediction markets, because the main value of information, theorists have always said, is to inform decisions. So if you can put the market information right next to the decision in this way, it just gets really obvious that it's informing the decision. You literally say, if we do this, what happens? If we do that, what happens? So some examples. For many decades, actually now, there have been markets betting on presidential elections in the US. There's usually markets on who will be nominated and markets on who will be president. Well, the ratio of those two prices is the conditional chance of being elected if nominated, which is advice to the parties about who to nominate. They don't usually listen to the advice, but it's there and available. This time around, we definitely aren't listening to the advice because the alternatives to Trump and Biden quite often had a larger conditional chance of winning than either of those did, but apparently it's Trump versus Biden. Looking forward to that, all right? Some other examples of real decision markets. A while back, there was a block size debate in Bitcoin, and somebody actually set up a conditional market on the market value of Bitcoin, conditional on this policy choice. There's currently something called a MetaDAO out there that's using decision markets to decide which group projects it takes on. I wish I could tell you more, but I'll just tell you the following. There is an India-based government project using decision markets to make decisions on health policy choices in a particular district. And they've already done half dozen policy choices and had the market evaluate it and have hundreds of thousands of trades. And I really want to talk to you more about that when I'm allowed to. But for a while, I'm being quiet. So anyway, that's as much as I'm going to say there. If you're looking for a business opportunity here, my best guess for a profitable one is a new hire market. Almost all organizations hire a few new people every year. Almost all organizations have an employee evaluation process where they say how good the employee is periodically. So the simple pitch is set up markets estimating the employee evaluation conditional on hiring. So you have the final round of hires, maybe 6 for each one, estimate this conditional value, and then that's advice, doesn't require you to follow it, about who to hire. There's just enormous value there, I would say. And the key idea, again, in prediction markets and decision markets is people at the top of organizations making decisions often just don't know a lot of things a lot of other people know. Prediction markets are a great mechanism to get the information other people know that they might not tell you if you just ask them into a form that you can use to advise a decision. And that's what this is. All right. Now, if I had $1 million and you didn't want me to make money with it, I could just have fun. Why? I would do the fire the CEO markets. That is, I take the whole Fortune 500, and for each company, I'd have a market in what's the stock price if the CEO leaves by the end of the quarter, and what's the stock price if the CEO stays by the end of the quarter. The difference between those two prices is advice to the board to fire the CEO or not. You can bet this would make the news. People would be talking about the advice of these markets about CEOs. You can even bet the CEOs would attempt to manipulate these markets, and that would add liquidity, and that would be good. And if you need some extra revenue, why you could allow some companies to pay you to delist their company. But anyway, it would make the news, it would be fun, and it would prove the concept in a very dramatic way that might inspire people to apply it more elsewhere in the world. No corporate CEO would fail to understand the markets. They would all read up enough to figure out what the hell they are, how they work, and do they want to manipulate them? Do they want to deny them? But they would now get it, that this is a way to find the truth about things. Because, of course, the ones who are getting a low evaluation by the markets, CEO probably knows why. right? I mean, they're not that stupid, right? And so they're going to kind of get, yeah, this is a way to find out uncomfortable truths that can be hard to stop. All right, now the word governance was promised, and I actually got to it before my time's out. That's good. This mechanism of decision markets can be applied to governance. Of course, what I just said was governance. Do we fire the CEO? But it can be applied more generally to something like a city or a nation or a place like Prospera. So here's my argument. In general, in the world, it's not that hard to tell rich, happy nations from the other ones. I mean, there's subtleties, but from a distance, this isn't that hard. Two, the way that the not so rich, happy nations end up that way is largely by doing stupid things. And they should have known those were stupid things if they had aggregated information from the best sources on what are, in fact, stupid things to do. So governments largely fail by not aggregating information about the consequences of their policy actions. And speculative markets are our best known mechanism for aggregating information into a common source you can trust to decide whatever you want to decide. Therefore, we put this all together. What we ought to do is try to vote on values but bet on beliefs. That's my slogan. So here's your status quo. That's you down at the bottom. Don't you look nice? Then you read news media and other communication mechanisms. You elect representatives. They vote in a legislature and pass bills, and then the courts judge whether that is allowed, and things become law. That's the world we live in now. Here's an alternative world. You still elect legislatures, and they now only pass bills that oversee an organization that measures national welfare, i.e. every year or even month, they look back and they say, how well are we doing? They count the number of trees, jobs, leisure, everything we like, and add up to some number, which is the total national welfare. That's their job up there. And the legislature oversees that process and changes the weights on trees, etc. And then on the right, we have speculators. You can be a speculator if you want, but you don't have to. And then we're going to have betting markets on expected value of national welfare, conditional on some alternative policy or conditional on the status quo. So we have these decision markets, estimating national welfare, conditional on a particular adopted proposal. So then we have an auction process basically to decide what's the next proposal we'll consider. And then of course they can use media in the middle. And now we would vote on values but bet on beliefs is the key idea here. We could together decide what we wanted. Now, we're not going to do that great a job, but honestly, most of the big mistakes we make isn't not getting our values exactly right. It's just being completely wrong on what has what effects in the world. Which policies have what effects. That's the main way we get things wrong, and this fixes that. The speculators will definitely look carefully at each proposal and well estimate its consequences, because it's like the old saying the communists had about the capitalists, that they'll sell us the guns to do the revolution because capitalists will just sell us guns, right? Well, these speculators will bet and win on the bets in order to tell you the truth, even if the truth isn't so nice for the people who bet. So the main rule, what I call futarchy, yeah, it's a doofy name, but I came up with it separately. If a valid market estimates national welfare is higher given some proposed policy, that policy just becomes law. So there's lots of complicated issues with this. We have some subtleties, like there's a way we could have made a mistake in defining national welfare, so we might have markets that estimate future defined welfare to veto this, and we might use auctions and make sure the price difference is significant enough to justify doing something different, be a little conservative there. You could have treaties with other nations that basically you put a weight on their welfare and your choices, they put a weight on your welfare and their choices, a much more robust way to make treaties, etc. And I know if you thought about this, many of you have many concerns. I've heard of them all before, but happy to discuss now. And more concerns, and I'm surprised I fit that all in my 30 minutes. So I guess we have time for questions.
Can we have
Can we have a workshop with you on each one of those things before you leave?
Available. I'm here for a week, so happy to talk. Everybody wants to talk. Other comments, questions? Tomatoes you can throw at me, whatever. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, what will it take for people to start listening to the results of prediction markets and actually following what it advises?
So there's an example of replicability in academic papers in, say, psychology and medicine, etc. Some people have done some studies showing that polls and prediction markets can actually predict which papers will replicate. And we tried to get journals to say they would use this in deciding which papers to accept, and they would not do that. So you do have to get somebody who cares. And that's, of course, a key constraint here. If you have a mechanism that produces honest, if uncomfortable estimates, you do need to find someone who wants that as your customer. And a lot of people tend to want that and don't. And you'll just have to search farther to find somebody who does. If nobody in the world ever wants to know the truth about anything, okay, I give up.
Yeah, I'm just curious, in a long list of concerns that you breezed through, I'm sure it's in there, and I'm wondering how you think about, I guess, if you might call it market manipulation, or people manifesting, say they short a decision, and then bring it into being. It seems like there could be some perverse incentives there, and I'm just wondering how you think about that.
So there's several things that go under the word manipulation. It sounds more like you might mean what I'd call sabotage.
Yeah.
Okay, so say we have a market on will we make a deadline. You might think somebody could bet against our making the deadline and then sabotage the project, make sure it doesn't make the deadline, right?
Yeah.
So a simple solution to that is anybody could have any substantial influence on the project. You make sure they all start with a positive state and can't bet it below zero. They could reveal their information by how much above or below zero they go. Just don't let them go below zero. Make sure nobody ever gets a negative stake in the project, and then nobody has an incentive to sabotage. So, I mean, you know, obviously, you can't do that for everybody in the world, but most people in the world really can't do much to sabotage. Usually there's a smaller number of identifiable people who could do something to sabotage it, and you want to make sure none of them want to.
What about anonymous? I mean, you can pay your cousin to short.
Then we'll have to track that. So if you think about it, actually, most stock markets would seem to be vulnerable to sabotage, right? So 9/11, they went, and the commission went and looked for people who must have been selling stock short, buying options on 9/11, because that would have been obvious, but they didn't find anybody. In the Tylenol scare in the 80s, they went and looked for somebody must be selling stock shares short to make money off of, but they didn't find anybody.
I mean, they just published something on Twitter about, you know, the Bitcoin ETFs being approved, and look what it did to the price in a very short amount of time. And it doesn't take much to move parts.
But was there sabotage in that case?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely.
What were they?
They were
erasing ETFs? What were they?
They were publishing information subversively that was inaccurate, but moved the market for a short period of time.
Well, so lies is a different thing, right? We were just talking about directly, physically causing the damage. Lies, people have been lying in financial markets ever since the beginning. Lies are just ubiquitous in all sorts of financial areas, including startup cities, I'm sure. You're supposed to not believe everything everybody says, and treat what people say skeptically, and otherwise you're vulnerable to believing lies. Yeah, I can't do anything about that exactly. That's just ubiquitous, the human condition.
All right, I get it on. Privilege. So, what about a prediction market on how long you're going to live that could be, of course, shorted, and then you have an incentive to for people to murder you?
Well, the question is, what information are you trying to get there? So again, the point isn't just to throw markets at everything, like splatter them on the wall. The point is to inform particular decisions. Figure out what decisions you want to make, then make a market to inform that decision. It's the person who wants to make that decision is the customer for this. So if you didn't want to make some decision about how long you'd live, you're kind of stupid to go set up this market that might give people incentive to kill you. I mean, come on.
But if anyone can create any market for anything.
I didn't say anybody could create any market. I said we could create a lot more useful markets. That's the plan. There's a lot big potential of where we can go than we are going.
So the decision market is a hard case of the prediction market because you only care about the truth and you don't necessarily have like people who naturally want to be long or short. Probably the most successful in terms of volume prediction market outside of like sports betting and the stock market is people trading on presidential candidates and who's going to win and not going to win. For these markets, they're natural hedgers. Like a lot of firms have exposure to whoever is going to be president. Like it makes a huge difference for a lot of companies whether or not it's going to be a Democratic or Republican administration. And yet those people don't even try to hedge. So, right? Why don't we see those low-hanging fruits, like which is even lower than the decision market being picked?
So let's just be clear. The same mechanism can be used for two different purposes. One purpose is hedging risks. The other purpose is aggregating information to make decisions. So far in history, almost all markets were created that are large for hedging risk, not for aggregating information. The information's been a side effect. And I say we want more markets to aggregate information. I'm going to say, be honest, you have to pay for that. Like, if you want a market to advise whether you fire the CEO, you may need to subsidize that market because maybe people didn't want to hedge that. But people have gotten used to this idea that information generated is a side effect of hedging markets and they just get to shower in this free information. Fine, enjoy that, but if there's other information you're not getting for free, pay for it. It's worth it to get the information. It doesn't cost that much and it helps you a lot to make better decisions. That's the pitch here. Pay for the information that's valuable to you.
Dude.
Thank you so much, Ravi.